is not a very concise question. Just in general. What's the icon you have on your base? That's a clan decal. If you are the owner of a clan, you can put a clan decal. You can look it up, just Google it, SC2 clan decal. Can you play a few games, all 3 races against me, and do a replay that analyzes me, and you can learn from that? Yeah, if you win free coaching. I'm a Terran player. My biggest problem is Roach Ravager. Using medevacs well whenever they're moving out. You want to have 2 medevacs to move into their base. And also just knowing where their army is so you can have your tanks in position. You want tank bio to be able to deal with it. Maybe even some liberators, but if you get caught out of position, that's how you lose every time. So make sure you put a focus on finding out where their army is. How fast do I have to get expansions as Zerg? As quickly as possible. Usually want to expand at about 1 to 1.5 minutes early on for that hatch first or something like that. And then maybe a third base at 4 or 5 minutes at the latest. I'm a Protoss player and often struggle against Roach Lurker and Hydra Lurker combos. I have some videos on YouTube of me playing PvZ, but Immortal Archon Charge Lot with a Warp Prism to pull them out of position is your best option. Also Storms if possible. Zerg Newbie just started PvP and I keep getting rushed by Protoss. Any assistance? You want to have 1 pylon near the front and at least 1 pylon in your mineral line so that way you can defend against Oracles or Adept run-bys or something like that. And also maybe consider hard walling off if you know they're going for an early attack. What is your favorite type of cake? I like really chocolatey chocolate cake. No frosting, unless it's chocolate. Just more chocolate on top. I'm into that. Do you hold these noob days on a schedule or just when you feel like it? Not really a schedule. Usually you have about 1 per week. Sometimes, like, if I'm going to do a full noob stream, I will tell you guys the day that's going to be. But this was just, I'm streaming for a couple hours in the morning and seemed like something to do. But I also have guides on YouTube with highlights and guides and stuff like that. Colossi versus Disruptors. Disruptors are better. Well, I don't know if you're talking about in all matchups, but Disruptors are usually better, except against maybe Ghost-based unit compositions, or just straight, like, Lurker-based unit compositions. But Disruptors have a lot more utility and they're cheaper, in most situations, especially PvP. Charge Lot, Immortal Archon Phoenix style. I mean, Lurkers into Broodlords. A lot of people miss out, like, by the time they have a perfect Immortal Archon Charge Lot composition, you want to be switching into Broodlords because they're really lacking in anti-air, especially if they just have, like, 6 or 7 Phoenixes, maybe. But the Broodlord switch is what wins you games, not necessarily the Lurkers against a smart player. Also, you can deal with the Warp Prisms as well. What is your clan decal? Bob Ross. I am in the Paint Clan, the happy little clan on Europe, of which I am the only member. Terran late game. Zerg Ultralisk and Protoss have... well, they have plenty. Thank you, Jack in the Box, for that sub. Give them some love, boys. How do you deal with storms? Masters, how do you deal with storms Protoss the best way? Well spread. You need to know where their army is, and you need to have well spread lurkers and roaches and ravagers, and you can never have your army clumped up. Clumped up against Protoss is death. Terran late game, Zerg Ultralisk and Protoss have other things. Well, usually against Ultralisk, you want plenty of Liberators early on. That's one thing that they really can't use that well. Deal with that easily is Liberators, and then eventually Ghosts and Widow Mines. Like, you want a lot of Widow Mines and Ghosts and other stuff other than Bio. Good timing to put up Spore Crawlers, Cannons, or Missile Turrets. I mean, as soon as you're going for an additional base, like if you want to expand, you're going to have to start making static defense, because if you're going, especially for a third base for most races, that's when they can start bringing Warp Prisms and Medevacs and Run-Bys and stuff like that in. To pull you out of position. So usually when you're going for your third base is when you're really starting to stock up on static defense. What does the win percentage need to get promoted? You can use the bonus pool command for my video on bonus pool matchmaking, rating, and promotions if you're wondering how to get promoted. Thank you for the advice. That's not a question, but no problem. As Protoss, what is a good way to beat Bio without Disruptors? Actually, most top-level players don't use Disruptors against Bio. What you're looking for is a strong, immortal, adept unit composition with good upgrades, and then eventually going into Archons and Storm and Charge Lots. Later on, a lot of people lately have been getting Colossi and then eventually Tempest to deal with Liberators as well, but you can add on Colossi eventually, but Immortal, upgraded Adept is the best way to deal with Bio early on, with a few sentries for Guardian Shield. I play Zerg. Do you have any tips against Mass Carrier plus Mothership? If you let it get to that point, you've already made a mistake, but pretty much Viper, Corruptor is your best hope. Good luck. In ZVZ, is there any way to avoid Ling Bane fight? Not really in the early game if they really want to force you into it, so just embrace it. I got some videos. I actually have a tutorial in my Learn to Play on how to do Ling Baneling if you want to check that out. What style do you like to go with ZVT against Mech? you're looking at Roach Ravager and then transitioning into like a Broodlord, Viper, Corruptor composition, because once they're getting good at dealing with the ground, usually they don't have as much anti-air, so it's kind of like playing against Protoss, but without the lurkers. How do I handle as PvZ? How do I handle a 3-base Roach Hydra that goes for quick upgrades? You're just looking to have a strong amount of Immortals. You need to have your pylons set up in the right place to defend. A lot of players don't overlook this, because they'll have like one pylon, maybe 2 or 3 pylons at your third base to defend, and eventually Archons and Charge Lots. Charge Lots are very good. You don't need Disruptors. Disruptors are ideal, but Immortal Archon Charge Lot does deal with pretty much everything on the ground eventually. Immortals, though. Immortals are the real key. Immortals are really fucking good. What is the counter for Thors? You didn't give me a race, but there are plenty of counters. Immortals, Marauders, Marauders, Liberators. There you go. You got 3, and a Zerg, just Roaches. How to deal with early Roach push as Protoss. Well-positioned pylons. Good force fields. You got to make sure you have your pylons in the right spot. If you're just getting overrun half the time, it's because you're either depowering all your units or you don't have Photon Overcharge in place. You just don't have vision of your opponent's army. I already answered the Spore Crawlers missile turrets. What to do against Drone Rush and ZVZ when he is morphing Spine to my base. You got to pretty much hit him before the Spines morph, but you should have, in Legacy of the Void, enough drones and eventually get Lings to pull, unless you want Hatch first, in which case it becomes a little bit more difficult and you got to do some drone micro. Thank you, Arby. Anytime now, Jamura. When is the right time to attack? If you feel like you're letting your opponent build up too much army? The time to attack is either when they're expanding, because they're stretching themselves more thinly when they're expanding, or when you hit a certain tech. Like, you just finished Storm, it's time to attack. Or they're taking a third base, maybe I want to do an attack. But those are the most vulnerable timings, either when you have a tech advantage or if they're making themselves vulnerable by expanding. If you don't know when to attack, just expand and tech up, because eventually you're going to have the best army in that case. What can you do as Zerg versus Void Ray Carrier? Well, I mean, Hydra Corruptor or Hydra Viper is pretty good. Carriers are difficult to beat in that large number, but if you can pick them out or isolate them. Queens are also actually very good, because you can transfuse and they only cost gas, so they synergize well with a lot of stuff. Why is nobody playing Swarm Hosts? Because Swarm Hosts are just not that useful of a unit compared to pretty much every other unit, by cost of supply and just minerals and gas. Why are Terrans going into more Liberator-focused army instead of Vikings? That's because Liberators also have that ground control potential. You no longer have to make other units to control the ground. The Liberator can clear out the air units. If you have like 10 Liberators, it kills things almost as fast as Vikings. And, of course, you can use that anti-ground mode very effectively, so. Alright. I hope I answered a lot of your questions. I'm going to play a couple more games tonight.